I'm Paul Amenta. I'm the founder of SiteLab and an artist.
I'm Ted Lott. I'm an architect here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I like to build stuff.
Well, probably the simplest way to describe it is we're creating an accessible pavilion of sorts. It's a bit of a theater. It's a music venue. It's a gathering space. What we were hoping to accomplish with it was to essentially create an infrastructure, a platform of sorts for the community to then take over. We could build this thing, get it started, and then walk away and say, now it's yours, and do with it what you want, add on to it, tear it down, whatever, right? The project sort of is successful based on their participation at the site. We're just sort of getting it started, right? We're sort of building out the space, this accessible space, and we're asking people to come in and use it and abuse it however they wish, right?
So I'm Jill Vinn, and I'm co-founder and co-director of Disart with Chris. We've been together since 2014, and during that time, we've really come to believe that expressions of disability, cultural identity, help us to increase the awareness, understanding, and belonging of people with disabilities so that we can create a community where all people participate.
Over the years, we've been really fortunate to collaborate with artists and universities and galleries and folks who are interested in helping reformulate what it means to be disabled. And I think people expect access to be about ramps and elevators, and in some ways that will always be the case because we do need to make sure that our physical built environment is accessible. But what we're trying to talk about is a larger sort of cultural access, which is all about empowerment and about flourishing. So how do you flourish as a society? We believe that you flourish as a society when you give everybody a chance to be part of it.
Public art really allows me to center the art first and put it in front of kind of a larger public audience, those that may not have access or even know about certain shows or gallery openings that are occurring. I'm making this about 25-foot steel sculpture. It's kind of looking at discrepancy in urban development. The idea is to sort of do a visual juxtaposition, right? The idea that while there's an enormous amount of development occurring in the downtown area, there's certain marginalized groups, Blacks and Hispanics, that don't have that kind of same access to it. I'm interested in the way cities look, the way they're navigated, the way they're experienced. That sort of idea of kind of belonging, it always comes back to who's sort of telling the story, right? And that's why there's this sort of large, right now, kind of push for diverse voices, or just voices that you don't normally hear from, right? And you don't lose anything by adding voices to the conversation. You literally only gain from adding voices. You just get an enormous amount of stories and perspectives to choose from and to think about and to consider.
I'm Heather Hart, and I'm making a couple of oracles for Project One. The oracles are roof-shaped sculptures that are participatory. You know, as an American Black person, we are kind of bequeathed the trauma. People were stolen from their homes and brought to the country. So thinking about the idea that there was no space of our own, the territory that we were able to keep with us through generations was psychological space, oral histories, oral traditions. And so I feel like I'm talking lately a lot about the kind of audacity of claiming space and how that's not something I think that we're traditionally taught as Black people, to think audaciously, to think in the terms of large-scale artwork, sculpture, and to kind of mark your territory and kind of shout your power from that space. Architecture has such a huge impact on how we move through space and how a city is built, and equity and access. Every space that I go, I understand a little more about humanity and understand a little bit more about each of the cities that I land in. And that's kind of why the roof has remained the same everywhere I go, the same form, because it's a metaphor for me. It's like whether it belongs or doesn't belong.
My name is Rafael Lozano Hammer. I'm a Mexican-Canadian artist. I am working in a new project called Voice Bridge. It's going to be a large-scale interactive light and sound piece. The project basically asks participants to come in and leave their thoughts into a system that then visualizes this voice in conjunction with the past 400 participants. So everybody who leaves a message, it gets added to this archive, this kind of urban manifestation of these voices. And then as you cross the bridge, you hear the voices of the participants over time. So today, every city, a new building in Grand Rapids or in Mexico City or in Singapore, is bound to be very similar to each other because buildings are no longer representing citizens. Interactivity is a way to turn the tables a little bit on those kinds of established power narratives. I mean, when we first started studying Grand Rapids, and especially in the context of the thematic of Project One, the idea of borders, of lines, of connections, pedestrian walking, of how to reconnect the citizen with their city, it seemed obvious to me that the bridge is one of the most salient infrastructures for that to happen, right? So it connects two parts of the city. It's pedestrian only, which is something that I think is already very majestic, when people feel an ownership of a place, they're not concerned that someone's gonna run them over. And so it's a very perfect place to do this kind of project because first thing is you own this. This is yours. This is not nobody's selling you anything. Nobody's bringing you there because you can buy some stuff. It's really a civic infrastructure. I mean, from a perspective of urban planning, well, maybe the pedestrian bridge is not necessary, it's for getting people from A to B, especially in a car culture. But if now what you're talking about is the creation of a modern city people want to habitate, who want to be in and spend time and feel an ownership to, you have to create an infrastructure for them to be there.